I found out on a Wednesday morning in April and I did not say a single word about it for 3 weeks. Not to her. Not to my friends. Not to my brother, who is the person I tell everything to and who would have driven 4 hours that same night if I had called him. 3 weeks of knowing something that reorganized every memory of the previous 8 months and showing nothing on my face. I want to tell you why I made that choice, because it was not the obvious one and it did not come from a cold or calculated place. It came from something simpler. I needed to understand the full shape of what had happened before I did anything that could not be undone. Her name was Jess. We had been together for 6 years. We had an apartment together, a shared life, the kind of accumulated history that makes a relationship feel permanent in the way that only time can produce. We had talked about getting married, not with a ring or a date but with the comfortable assumption of two people who have stopped questioning whether the other one will be there. I had not questioned it. Apparently she had found an answer elsewhere. I found out through her phone, which I was not looking through. This is the truth and I am going to say it plainly because the how matters to the story. We had a shared calendar on both our phones for logistical reasons, shared expenses, appointments, the ordinary coordination of two people running a life together. I was checking the calendar for a dentist appointment time when a message notification appeared on her screen from a name I did not recognize. The preview was 4 words. 4 words was enough. I put her phone down exactly where it had been. I went to the kitchen. I made coffee I did not drink. I stood at the window for a while looking at the street below and doing the specific arithmetic of a person who has just received information they cannot return. 8 months. That was what the next several days of careful, quiet attention produced. Not dramatic investigation, just the retrospective clarity that comes when you know what you are looking for. Evenings that had not added up, explained away at the time as work and tiredness and the natural friction of a long relationship. A trip she had taken with a friend that I now understood had not been with a friend. A change in her phone habits that I had noticed and not examined because I had trusted her. 8 months of a parallel life running alongside ours. The man's name was Connor. He worked in her industry, a different company, someone she had met at a conference the previous summer. I knew this not because I investigated him but because once I knew his name the pieces assembled themselves from things she had mentioned casually in the months since, a colleague she had referenced, a name that had appeared in work conversations without weight because I had no reason to give it any. I sat with all of this for 3 weeks. Not passively, I was processing, deciding, understanding what I wanted the outcome to be before I created one. What I understood, by the end of those 3 weeks, was this: I did not want a confrontation. Not because I was afraid of one, but because a confrontation would make the ending about the argument rather than about the truth. I did not want to watch her manage my reaction. I did not want to sit across from her while she decided what version of the explanation to give me. I wanted to leave cleanly, on my own terms, with my dignity intact and my next steps already decided. So I made arrangements first. I spent those 3 weeks doing the quiet practical work of someone who is preparing to exit a shared life. I found an apartment, a small one, available the first of the following month, in a neighborhood I had always liked and that had no associations with our relationship. I contacted my bank and separated the accounts that needed separating. I spoke to a friend who was a landlord about my rights regarding our lease, which was in both our names. I moved certain things, documents, items of personal significance, things that were clearly and only mine, to my brother's place in small quantities over 2 visits that I explained as dropping things off. By the end of the 3 weeks I had a place to go and a plan for going there. On a Saturday morning I waited until Jess was in the shower. I left a note on the kitchen table. Not a long note. I had thought carefully about the length and had decided that long notes invite responses and I did not want a response. The note said that I knew about Connor, that I had known for 3 weeks, and that I had already found a new apartment and would be collecting my things over the following week. It said I wished her well and meant it, and that I would be in touch through a mutual friend regarding the logistics of the lease. Then I left with the bag I had packed the night before and drove to my brother's house. She called 11 times that day. I did not answer. I sent one text that said I needed space and would be in contact about practical matters when I was ready. She texted for several days, apologies, explanations, requests to talk. I read them and did not respond. Not out of cruelty, I genuinely had nothing to say that would serve either of us. Everything I needed to say had been in the note. I collected my things over 2 weekday mornings when I knew she would be at work. I left everything that was hers exactly where it was. I took nothing that could be contested. I left my key on the kitchen counter. I moved into my new apartment on the 1st of May. I assembled my furniture over a weekend. My brother helped and did not talk too much, which is the most valuable thing a person can do when someone is in that specific state. I want to tell you now about what happened to Jess and Connor, because this is the part of the story I could not have written and did not plan and that I have thought about many times since in terms of what it means about the nature of certain choices. I found out what happened through a mutual friend approximately 4 months after I moved out. I had not asked for updates, she volunteered the information because she thought I should know, and because the information was the kind that is difficult to keep. Connor, it turned out, had not left his own relationship for Jess. He had been with someone else, a long-term partner of his own, during the entire 8 months he and Jess had been together. Jess had not known this, or had not known the full extent of it. She had believed, from what I understood, that he was in a complicated situation that was in the process of resolving. It had not been resolving. He had been managing 2 situations simultaneously with the specific skill of someone who had done it before. When Jess discovered the full picture of who Connor was, discovered it in the particular way that these things tend to surface, through a detail that was too specific to explain away, the relationship collapsed immediately and without the gradual dissolution that sometimes softens these endings. It ended in a single conversation that, by the account I received, was not kind. She had left a 6-year relationship for a man who had never intended to give her what she had given up. I sat with this information for a while when I received it. I want to be honest about what I felt, because the easy version of this story would have me feeling satisfied, and the truth is more complicated than that. I did not feel satisfied. I felt something quieter and stranger than satisfaction, a kind of recognition, the feeling of a shape completing itself in a way that did not require my participation. I had not wished this on her. I had not hoped for it. I had moved out and moved on and built a new daily life in a new apartment, and the thing that had happened to her had happened entirely without my involvement. That is the specific quality of certain consequences. They do not require you to arrange them. They follow from the choices made, at a pace you cannot control and in a form you cannot predict, and they arrive whether or not anyone is watching. I felt sorry for her, actually. Not in a condescending way, genuinely. She had made a decision that had cost her something real, and the thing she had traded it for had turned out to be something other than what it appeared. That is a specific kind of pain that I would not wish on someone I had loved, even after what had happened. I sent her one message when I heard. It said, "I heard things didn't work out. I'm sorry it happened that way. I hope you're okay." She responded the next day. She said thank you. She said she was sorry for what she had done. She said she had not understood what she was throwing away. I read the message. I did not respond to it. Not because I was unwilling to forgive. I had, in the months since May, done most of the work of that privately and without her involvement, because forgiveness is something you do for yourself and not for the other person. But because there was nothing to say that would serve either of us. The chapter had closed. Her regret, however genuine, was not something I needed to receive. I am going to tell you where I am now because I think the now is the point of the story. It is 14 months since the Saturday morning note. I am in my apartment, which I have arranged to my own preferences without compromise or negotiation, which is a specific pleasure I had forgotten existed. I am in a relationship that is 4 months old with someone I met through a work event, someone whose communication is direct and whose presence is consistent and who has never once in 4 months given me a reason to question what is real. I did not look for someone quickly. I spent several months alone intentionally, not as punishment but as recalibration, understanding who I was without the context of a 6-year relationship and what I wanted the next chapter to look like before I began writing it. The apartment Jess and I had shared was released from the lease at the end of the summer. The mutual friend told me Jess had moved to a smaller place in a different neighborhood. I wish her well with complete sincerity and complete indifference, which is the specific combination that means something has genuinely resolved. What I want to leave you with is something I have thought about across these 14 months, about the 3 weeks of silence after the Wednesday morning in April. That silence was the best decision I made in the entire situation. Not because it was strategic, though it turned out to be. But because it gave me time to understand what I actually wanted rather than reacting from pain to a version of events I had not yet fully understood. The 3 weeks transformed a situation in which I was blindsided into one in which I was, by the time anything became visible, entirely prepared. You cannot always control what happens to you. You can almost always control the pace at which you respond to it. 3 weeks of silence. One note on a kitchen table. A bag packed the night before. The rest took care of itself.